Folks, hello. I'm coming to you from my phone. My phone? Not my phone. My home, but also my phone. In Toronto. Home is something that has always been really important to me and is my sanctuary, is where I recharge. So I thought today we could talk about how I ended up in Toronto. But in order to do that, we've got to go back to the beginning. We're going to do a sort of an origin story, if you will. So I grew up in the United States, specifically Wyoming. Ding 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 ding. Get it, cowboy? Woo! Here's what you need to know about Wyoming. Wyoming is where all of my family is from. It is where most of my family still lives. Wyoming is one of the most beautiful states in the United States. When I lived there, there was more animals than there were people. I don't know if that's still the case, but I assume so. It's the home of Yellowstone National Park, the Grand Tetons, so many other beautiful landscapes. Now, I grew up in Rock Springs, which is the desert of Wyoming. Literally tumbleweeds blow across the road. Like, that's where I grew up. One of my favorite things about growing up in Wyoming is that our family had a cabin, or if you live in Ontario, you would call it a cottage, up north. And we spent a lot of summers there. That's where I learned to kneeboard. Yes, I can kneeboard. We did, inner tubing behind the boat. I had so many really fond memories of spending time with my friends and family up at the cottage. And it was a great place for me to sort of, understand the importance of community and love and family and being surrounded by them, and how that can set you up for success for the rest of your life. So I'm really grateful that I had the opportunity to grow up in such a beautiful place. However, like many kids in a small town, I was ready to get out. I was ready for adventure. I was ready for the big city. I wanted more opportunity. So I moved to Salt Lake City, Utah, which is about 2.5 hours away from where I grew up. It was far enough away that I could be independent, but close enough that it was scary I could still go home. Now, this is where I ended up going to university. I studied at Westminster College. I was also in Salt Lake City where I came out. I came to terms with my sexuality, and I had a really incredible support system while I was there. I went to my first gay bar. I had my first kiss. It was all really amazing. On top of that, while I was living in Salt Lake, the Olympic Games, the Winter Olympic Games happened, and Salt Lake City happened to be hosting. So I got to be there. And it was the first time, I'll never forget, it was the first time, it was sort of like Vegas, where you could walk on the streets and you could drink alcohol without getting in trouble. That was really cool to live there at a time that was full of energy and excitement and life and sports, which, I'm not a big sports guy, but it was cool to be there. This was also the place where I really continued to fall in love with theater and music. And if you saw a couple vlogs ago, it's where I did my first paid musical. I had so much fun. And in Utah, I really started to explore who I was in more of an authentic way, and start to live that authenticity. And I was excited for sort of the next adventure. Phoenix, Arizona. See you, Utah. I'm going to the Valley of the Sun. So I moved to Phoenix with no plan, no job, and no place to live. However, I have 2 aunts that live there, and my parents came with me. And luckily, I found a place right away. I worked retail for a couple years. I worked at Target, and then I worked at Pottery Barn for a bit, and then I eventually landed a job, or what I would consider my first adult job, working at a salon and spa. Started out answering phones, worked my way up, and became an operations director. Now, when I moved to Phoenix, though, I grew out my hair. I know it's hard to believe because I'm bald now, but I had long, curly hair. And then I decided to get a dog. I was ready for a little companionship. And I adopted a beagle mix. Her name was Daisy. My cousin was really kind, and she came with me to pick her out. And then she was very kind and gave it to me as a birthday gift. And then I became a parent, of this incredible dog who was very smart and very loving and very independent. And I just had the best time with her. One of my favorite things about living in Phoenix is the culture and the weather. The weather is incredible. And, in 10 months out of the year, you can swim in the pool. And although it does get very hot in the summer, it's very similar to when you live at a place that has winter. You just don't spend a lot of time outside. And if you do, you're in the pool. So, best case. I was in my mid-20s, so I was living it up, drinking on patios and just having, the best time. The other thing that was really cool about my time in Phoenix is that my best friend, who I'd gone to high school with, who we're stayed in touch, and we're actually still best friends today. My friend John. If you go back in my vlog archives, we did a whole interview together. He moved to Phoenix, and we reignited and became inseparable again. And in fact, my last year of living in Phoenix, we rented a house together. And I think that was probably the most fun that I have ever had. We rented this 3-bedroom house. We had a pool in the backyard. He had a dog. So we moved in together. It was everything. We cooked, we hung out, we watched the Golden Girls, we swam. However, the one thing that I was struggling with while living in Phoenix was my job. I loved the people that I worked with at the salon, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted more of a life of purpose other than a life of just monetary value in things. And I didn't know how to find that. And many of you have probably heard the story, so I won't get too much into it, but I was really struggling with my job and where I was in my life. And in December of 2007, a good friend of mine called and invited me to go on a volunteer trip to Kenya. And that trip changed my entire life. Came back from East Africa, and I knew that my entire life was going to change. I knew that I wanted to be a motivational speaker, and I wanted to work for the organization that I travel with that was based out of Toronto. I applied for a job, and a few months later, I packed up my entire life. My parents were really kind and adopted my dog, and I moved to Canada. Truthfully, I was terrified. I didn't know anyone. I wasn't familiar with the culture, and there were so many things for me to figure out. Like, what is the grocery store called? Where do I go? How do I get around? What cell phone plan? Like, all of those things that we maybe don't think about. But I eventually figured all those things out, and I met some really amazing people who are now my friends and family. And, through all the places that I lived, I never thought I would find a group of people that I would be as close to as I had in the United States. But I did. And I'm so grateful that I took that risk and that I moved here. On top of that is sort of where I became like a real adult. I bought this place that you are constantly seeing. I own this place. That was like such a big deal for me. It was a milestone to buy my own space, which brings me back to why we're doing this vlog in the first place. Home is important to me. Family and community is important to me. And having a place to go where I can feel safe and that is accessible and that provides comfort and allows me to recharge has always been the utmost of importance to me. And the cool thing is you can create that wherever you go. Over the last 13 years of living here in Toronto, I've had some incredible adventures, from climbing Kilimanjaro with my 2 best friends, going on tour with Demi Lovato, and 1,000 other things. What's next? I don't know. TBD. But I'm excited to bring y'all along this venture with me. Thank you so much for watching today and allowing me to share a little bit of my origin story. Hope y'all are having a great week. And as always, you're my new best friend. Call me every 5 minutes. Goodbye.